So, let's just paint a picture here for a second. It's raining out, a light drizzle. The pines form a group hug around you, and you look through them and see haze. Everything is lush, everything is green, it's beautiful, it's mystical, it's twilight.
I'd never given much thought to how I would die. But dying in the place of someone I love seems like a good way to go.
Oh God, where do I even start? We all remember Twilight, right? I think I was like 9 when it first came out, and I was sitting on my brother's futon in his room, watching it with my family. Nothing stuck in my memory quite like that opening scene with that deer being chased. It was a perfect series for the most perfect breeding ground for a unique aesthetic. You see Twilight, and you know what you're getting yourself into. Fogginess, rain, deep, dark mystery, and tragic love. Love so good that it hurts. It's almost reminiscent of the Romeo and Juliet story, which New Moon was based on, by the way. So Twilight comes out in 2008 and we get 5 movies. The last one came out in 2012, and from then on we get radio static. Twilight as a mainstream idea pretty much flatlines. We get the Midnight Sun book, which came out in 2020. However, it did receive mixed reviews. It was from Edward's perspective. I didn't read it, but from what I can tell, for these types of love stories that are written for young girls, it's best to put it in the perspective of the woman to give it much more of a relatable feel, because she can put herself in that character's perspective. And from what I've heard, with it being from Edward's perspective, the veil kind of starts to be lifted and you get a much better sense of his true creepy motivations and manipulation tactics, and it starts to read more as a horror story rather than a love story. Taken from the Journal of Family Violence, although unhealthy features of these 3 relationships, Beauty and the Beast, Twilight, and 50 Shades of Grey, are often masked in romanticization, the inherent disproportional power dynamic of the virgin beast trope results in the male partners using their beastly power through threats, intimidation, isolation, and stalking to control the subordinate and virginal female partner. In response, the female partners try to tame the beast, but ultimately suffer harm as a result. And I think that's why these girls love Twilight so much, is because it's a romanticization of what they want men to be. An almost biological, embedded desire for a man who controls his impulses and deep desires because he loves her. Some might say this has similarities to a woman's fear of cheating. That she might catch her man catching glimpses at a young girl walking by at the grocery store while she's pushing the stroller. Edward puts Bella at the very center of his world, pays attention to her, but the vampirish tendencies do a sort of balancing act.
About 3 things I was absolutely positive. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how dominant that part might be, that thirsted for my blood.
The only reason I left was because I thought I was protecting you. I needed you to have a chance at a normal, happy life.
It conveys strength, feminine and masculine traits in a perfect mixing pot. So Twilightcore. We saw it emerging in 2021 when the Twilight franchise made its way to Netflix and quickly ranked within Netflix's top 10 most streamed movies. TikTok started popping off with Twilight-inspired looks, and now we have Twilightcore. Now, Twilightcore has some overlap with a few different aesthetics, I've noticed. Fairy grunge being one, downtown girl, and whimsy goth. With fairy grunge emerging in the early 2000s, primarily sprouting from the fairy fandom and the books by Holly Black. Downtown girl comes from girls on Pinterest dressing casually and going to museums and cafes. Think of that movie Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. A group of friends adventuring through the streets of New York City at night, going to small concert venues featuring small independent musicians. It's sort of a romanticization of the urban life, but with more of a hole-in-the-wall twist. And then you have Whimsigoth with elements of mystery and ties to the occult and witchiness. A lot of these aesthetics have a common theme of romanticization of darkness and misunderstood strong female leads who aren't like other girls. So what can be characterized as Twilightcore? Think fitted Henleys, Carhartt jackets, bootcut jeans, and Converses. Delicate jewelry or jewelry with Victorian undertones. Oh, and zipper jackets. The Twilightcore aesthetic is sort of like the dark academia to the light academia. So the Y2K feel of the pink and the light blue and the pastels and the almost Barbie feel of the early 2000s. This would almost be like the dark academia version of it. There's an emphasis on the old, ancient, and mysterious, underpinned by the boring mediocrity of suburban life. So the same goes for the style. Plain, casual, with little sprinkles of the ornate jewelry, small bows on camisoles, peasant tops with puff sleeves paired with plain jeans and sneakers. And it's funny because I don't think this trend is really staying in its place. Now we have balletcore, which rose to prominence in 2022 on TikTok, and with it has come some interesting styles. And I don't think anyone is doing it quite as well as Best Dressed from what I've seen. It's a mix of both ballet styles from like the modern era and the 18th century styles. Pearls, light colors, silk, lace, mesh, bows, and kitten heels galore. Embroidered corset tops, French toile, hope I'm saying that right. From far away, this might not even look related to Twilightcore in any sort of way, but you'd be wrong. So ballet's inception came during the Romantic era, placing emphasis on such emotions such as trepidation, horror, and awe experienced in confronting the sublimity of nature. And with the period came the start of ballet and the marriage between dramatic storytelling and dramatic technique. And with this, stories of good versus evil, man versus nature, and society versus the supernatural became very prominent. And women were at the center stage. Men were sort of orbiting around them, being the supporting role. Themes dealing with love, loss, and yearning for the spiritual transcendence became very popular during the time. So you're kind of starting to see a picture here. There's very many similarities between the two, Twilightcore and balletcore. And don't even get me started on cottagecore, which 100% borrows from the Romantic era. There's a lot of innocence, simplicity, and transcendence through connecting to nature as a life-giving force. But I mean, it kind of makes you wonder why these aesthetics are making a comeback right now. The Romantic period was a reaction to the Enlightenment, which was the age of reason and intellect.
The scale of thoughts and monuments decreased, and practicality and restraint became some of the most admired values of the time, especially in the higher echelons of culture.
It advocated reason as a means to establish an authoritative system of aesthetics, ethics, government, even religion, which would allow humans to obtain objective truth about the whole of reality. But some people kind of got tired of that. They're like, I think not. This is too dry for me. I need passion, lust, life, whimsy. And with the French Revolution, it was brought back. History does repeat itself, right? It's never the exact same, but I am starting to wonder if maybe things are getting a little bit too stale for us as a society. We're looking for better ways to organize our governing systems, societies, our lives, and a whole lot of nothing's being done from the top. Maybe soon enough, we'll also get tired. And hopefully that doesn't get to that point. Maybe this is sort of like the birthing pains of a new era, and our style reflects our desires. We put on clothes as a reflection of our moods and feelings. I mean, I sure do. I wake up and say, how do I want to look today? My choices always seem to reflect my mood. Now back to Twilightcore. So Twilight is not the only franchise influencing fashion right now. You have Violet Harmon of season 1 of American Horror Story, a misunderstood girl in love with a violent school shooter ghost boy that her family can't see.
I'm calm. I know the secret. I know what's coming, and I know no one can stop me, including myself. I kill people I like.
How lovely. And what did we see during season 1 of American Horror Story? Girls were absolutely feral for this boy. I mean, yeah, he murdered 15 people, but he has a soft side. He's emotional. He cries. He loves Violet so much. He is, however, very manipulative. And he doesn't only manipulate Violet, but he manages to manipulate his audience as well. Very similarly to Bella and Edward. Like, if you want to see the portrayal of a girl experiencing major depression and suicidal tendencies who gets repeatedly dismissed by her family, pushed to the side, not listened to, not understood, who then turns to an abusive and manipulative man for support, gets into a toxic relationship, then watch season 1 of American Horror Story. It's really tragic, honestly, which I think was intended by the producers. But you know, I'm glad that these are only like a fantasy series where they can be indulged in our little minds and not translated to the outside world where women would go after a murderer, right?
16-year-old Eva is obsessed with Richard Ramirez. She says she writes him every day, and he writes back. And finally, Christine says she has an even closer relationship with Richard Ramirez. In fact, they're engaged and plan to be married later this year. How did the obsession with Jeffrey Dahmer begin? We know you like all serial killers, but how'd you pick this one?
Well, he's a very good-looking serial killer, and
sent him excerpts from books and poetry. Have you ever received a response?
no, I didn't receive a response.
Why do you think that he hasn't responded?
Well, in my own sick little mind, I thought he was protecting me from him.
Anyway, so yeah, thanks for watching. You can stream my new song, which will be linked up below. Working on an album about capitalism, and I'm hoping to get some of my songs mixed and mastered and out there, pushed out there soon. So take a listen. Yeah. Peace out, y'all.